When I was young, my mother used to read to me every night out of the encyclopedia. And one night she read me a chapter about the Mongol Empire, the Mongol invasion of Europe. And I was absolutely terrified. The sheer brutality, the genocide.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadromist. This is Byrne Power coming to you on a wonderfully rainy day here in Tbilisi, Georgia, effectively ending the summer weather. And as someone who lived 22 years in Alaska before moving here, I breathe again. It had gotten quite hot this summer, but I'm getting to like it more and to appreciate it. But I really appreciate the cool weather returning. What's interesting is that for the Georgians, this signals like, okay, the summer weather is ending, but they really like the warm weather. And so I say, fine, you get late May, you get June, you get July, you get all of August, and you get the beginning of September. The rest is for me. Thanks. So, we've got another in our series of Anadromous dialogues today. Actually, I think it's number 50. We're talking again with John Halley, who is a teacher in Greece, and he's been there for 25 years. But we have something different today. Rather than the usual conversation back and forth about stuff, we're going to be discussing his trip to Mongolia, which this kind of goes with another video that's lurking around here somewhere called Symbolic Countries. And my feeling is that countries become for us these symbols. Now, they're kind of different for everyone. So one person's Germany is not another person's Germany. One person's America is not another person's America. In fact, one person's America might include South America, and another person's America might or might not include Canada. So it really depends. But within there, then you have all the things that it reminds you of what it does for you. And then there's the country that you've never visited and that you're really interested in and what that says to you. And then there's the country that you have visited and what that says to you. So that's over on the other video. Go check that out. In fact, I'd suggest maybe watching that before you watch this. But one of John's symbolic countries was Mongolia. And so we've got a slideshow for you where we talk about John's trip to Mongolia. This will be interesting if you're interested in Mongolia, but it should also be interesting for you if you want to think about the symbolism of countries and breaking that symbolism with the reality of visiting, which then adds a different layer of symbolism. Okay, so reminder, I have a Patreon page, and thanks to those of you who have signed up. I really appreciate it, and I could use a few more people over there. So, without any further ado, let us talk with John Halley, Irishman, now living in Greece.
Okay, well, allow me to welcome back John Halley, Northern Irishman, right?
Southern Irish, Waterford.
Southern Irish. What, Cork?
Yeah. I was born in Dublin, but I grew up in Waterford in the southeast of the country.
Okay. Waterford is.
It used to be famous, very famous in America for the glass crystal we used to make,
right.
Waterford glass. Unfortunately, the factory closed many years ago, but I still remember it. Yeah,
right.
And many people will still remember it that way. Yeah,
some people do. Yeah, I always think Waterford crystal in my mind. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, though, you've been living in Greece for the last how many years?
It's 25 years now.
That's a couple of years. And
that's a while, yeah.
And you've been teaching. And
That's right. I teach at the university.
How many more years until that wraps?
I got another 3 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah, have to think about what I do when I hang up my gown and stuff. Yeah.
Right. And what we're doing today is a little different for me, but sounds like a great idea. I might put this over on my Georgian Crossroads and Beyond channel at a later date as well. You were doing a bit of a show and tell of your recent trip to Mongolia. And
yes,
what was your interest in going there?
Well, I had always been, it was a deeply personal interest. I had always been interested in Mongolia for all sorts of strange reasons, but probably because when I was young, my mother used to read to me every night out of the encyclopedia. And we went through the usual things, the dinosaurs, the world wars, all sorts of kind of stuff. And one night she read me a chapter about the Mongol Empire, the Mongol invasion of Europe. And I was absolutely terrified. The sheer brutality, the genocides, but the amazing success of the Mongols under Genghis Khan.
Right.
And so it was one of the things that really left a sort of a mark on me. And every time afterwards, I was always intrigued, and I'd be reading things, and I used to read an awful lot about the Mongols. But then at some point, I'd have to stop reading because I was so upset.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this strange personal response.
Right.
The only time I heard some people have these kind of things. I remember the French philosopher Simone Weil wrote about how she used to stay awake at night thinking about the Roman legions in the same way. Yeah. Well, that was sort of the background. So there are a few of these places I had always wanted to go to, and one of them was Mongolia.
I have this weird thing of Papua New Guinea and all of the island of New Guinea, because I saw in 1961 I was taken to a drive-in theater where they were showing what proved to be the documentary winner of the year for the Academy Awards. It was called The Sky Above, the Mud Below. And to this day, I eventually found it, but to this day, I found the film and I can show parts of it to people, and they're just like, what is this? I've never seen anything like it. It's just such an unusual place. So.
Yes, I remember one of your early documentaries when I started following you was a review. I think it was a review of that movie. Was it done by a French filmmaker? Yeah. And it kind of definitely, it was clear that it had made a big impression on you at the time.
I was just thinking, it was one of the first movies I ever saw in a movie theater. And it was an outdoor drive-in movie theater in Hawaii, of all places. And I think it fit because I was also in Hawaii. I was there from the age of 3 till 7. And so, all of this was of a piece for me. And so I stayed interested in it. Somehow later, I ended up going we moved to California. And when I was about 12 years old, there was a movie that was going around that I saw it twice. 2 different teachers in my, what we call junior high school, and now they call it middle school. 2 different teachers decided to show us this movie about tribal warfare in New Guinea called Dead Birds. And I have the movie now. I finally found it after so many years of looking. I have a copy of it here. And then later in New York City, I saw this film called Cannibal Tours. And it was about the first commercial tourism to come to New Guinea, which I always thought was an amazing movie. So all of those things, plus other things, kind of put I've actually got a video coming up called Symbolic Countries, and how different countries become these symbols to us of different things. And of course, everyone has different connections to different places. And obviously, Mongolia is one of your symbolic countries. And of course, the thing that happens whenever, Georgia was for me, at least for a few years, a symbolic country. And then you step into reality and everything is different.
Okay. And so my wife said to me, well, she said, why don't you've been talking all these years about going to Mongolia, so why don't we actually do it? So it persuaded me, and so we went during July.
Right. So
only 2 weeks, but there you go.
Let me bring up the map that we've got here, and we'll put ourselves off into the side. Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what we're looking at?
So that's a picture of Mongolia as it is today. It's basically borders two countries, both you might say are superpowers, Russia to the north and China to the south. And parts of it, of course, parts of its history are in both Russia and China. Most of the modern aspect is centered in Ulaanbaatar, which is north. You can see it there.
Right.
And so we landed in Ulaanbaatar. UB, I'll call it from now on. And so we did it in two sections. We had essentially two tours. The first one was to the northeast, to a place called Dadao.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the place that's associated with Mongol history, with Genghis Khan and all of his story before he started becoming a world conqueror. And then the second part was down towards the Gobi Desert. There's a town called Dalan Zadgad.
Mm-hmm.
Pronouncing Mongol names is really difficult for me. Anyway, so it was in two parts. Basically, our 2-week expedition was sort of two separate expeditions.
You want me to just shift to the next slide?
Yeah, well, so the next series of slides, in a way, are just basically aspects of this tour. They're not in any particular order.
Right.
So this one is the first one is of it's called the 9 standards. Now, I don't know, I see 12 of them there, but those were the original war standards that the Mongols used when they went on their wars of conquest. Someone told me that the original ones, which are still in existence, were taken by the Russians during the Soviet era and have never been returned. Apparently, the black ones were for war and the white ones were for peace. The Russians, they told me, took the black ones.
Yeah.
So anyway, so obviously this is just a reproduction. Now, there's one of the biggest. There's the biggest statue of Genghis Khan. Yeah, it's outside. It's outside UB, outside a short distance outside the capital. It was built a few years ago by one of Mongolia's millionaires, and it basically houses a museum of everything to do with the Great Khan. What's interesting, I guess, about Mongolia and the Mongols and today's Mongolia is that they very much live in the shadow of the Great Khan, Genghis Khan. And many of them, I asked them, I said, well, how do you feel about all the terror, all the things that the Mongol conquerors did? They were notorious for their brutality and for, massacring entire cities and so on. And they were very nice people. They said, we miss not being overlords anymore. And they sounded much like they might like to do it again, not out of anything personal, but they're in this they're in the shadow of this great figure. Of course, Genghis Khan was well known for some very good qualities as well, such as his belief in fidelity and loyalty among allies and so on. Truthfulness, things like that were highly esteemed. Mm-hmm. But I would say more anywhere else, I would say that the people kind of they tend to always want a great leader to emerge to solve problems. There are many nations that are in the shadow of their great past. Right. Greece, for example, when things are going badly for Greece in the modern world, a lot of Greeks they go back to their ancient history and so on, so that they can see good things. And Britain, I also thought was suffered a lot of this. Ireland, where I come from, our history is very modest, so we don't have anywhere to escape to.
Well, I think Ireland around the 6th century was great, and it was.
Ireland did play an important role in the early years of Christianity, certainly, and there was a scholarship and learning, all of these things. Ireland has a very good history in those early centuries, 5th, 6th, 7th century. So it's certainly very true. But it's not the kind of history that you get lost in. We don't have Alexander the Great or something like the Greeks do.
Are these pictures of the Khans?
Yes, those are the pictures of the Mongol dynasty following Genghis Khan. It's his sons, his grandsons, his nephews, many of whom became great conquerors themselves. The Mongol Empire was, in contrast, say, to Tamerlane, who was a great conqueror himself, but basically wasn't able to get his children to, he wasn't able to pass on his greatness to his children, so his empire started to break up very quickly. Alexander's not so much, but the Mongol Empire lasted for hundreds of years, and many, Genghis Khan basically established about half of the total empire, which went on to expand, or maybe even less, because they conquered Russia under his sons. Yeah.
Well, some people say that Russia gets its idea of the strongman from the Mongols.
Yes, it's very true that there was in Eurasia, there was a persistent idea of the strong man. And for example, Tamerlane, he's consciously modeled himself on Genghis Khan. And so he specifically set out to be cruel and brutal in many cases, in order that it might be seen that he was continuing this tradition of the strong man. This is this picture here goes back we're moving backwards in history. So these are called deer stones. And these are menhirs that date back to Paleolithic times. So they're prehistoric. So you see them all over the place. We saw many, many of them in Mongolia. Yeah. Here's another thing that makes Mongolia famous. Mongolia has many paleontological sites of interest. And so this is the skull of a protoceratops.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about the early and mid-Cretaceous period. And so there's a lot of so the layers, if you like, close to the surface in both Mongolia and China have many of these fossils. And it's believed that the origin of the legend of the griffin is based on discovering these remains. There's even in Chinese medicine a designation called stone dragon bones, which is basically powdered fossil protoceratops. So they have lots and lots of these fossils in all sorts of stages. There's even a skeleton of a protoceratops locked in battle with a velociraptor. It's one of the most interesting, one of the greatest fossil finds in the world. But unfortunately, we couldn't see it because my friends told me that the paleontologists can't agree with one another on how they should exhibit it and so on. So it remains locked in the basement in Ulaanbaatar. This is a petrified wood. So we went to some areas and there was petrified forests. And, they were just like... this petrified wood was, thrown around building sites and everything. It was. I had this image in my mind of what would happen if in the UK or even in Greece, a petrified tree was to be found. There would be like several rings of electric fence to prevent people touching it or stealing it. But here, it was there was so much of it. It was just lying around.
Right. So I guess we're moving on now to your natural shots, the shots of nature.
Yeah, this is me. We're looking at this is the Gobi Desert, and this is this plant is called Nitria, and this is an important plant, Nitraria, or the niter bush. This bush catches the sand that's blowing and it traps it. And thus the sand accumulates, thus forming a mound.
Right.
And thus it acts as a center where, anti-erosion, a center against erosion.
So it's a nitrogen fixer.
It's not. It doesn't have to do it's not because of nitrogen. Well, I'm not sure what its role in regarding nitrogen is, but its role in this part of the world is that you see small hillocks formed around this plant. It serves to stabilize the sand. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I read that essay you sent me this morning, and in one of the essays there was the story of a playwright who wrote about the Battle of Stalingrad from the point of view of a horse, an unfortunate horse that was caught in the fighting. Terrible thing. And one of the stories that really scared the living daylight out of me was how the Mongols used to do the hunt. And what they did was they'd get the whole army and they'd have an arc, and then they would stretch out the arc and then sweep, hundreds of square miles and flushing all the animals out. And eventually the arc would close, thus corralling the animals in the middle. And then the soldiers would then take turns in killing an animal. Obviously the great Khan would have to take a lion or a tiger or a bear or something, see, and on it went. So it sounded like an absolutely incredible slaughter. But anyway, they didn't slaughter everything, because you still get things like black-tailed gazelles and so on, that we saw on our trips, that again in the Gobi.
I am told during the period of severe crisis here in the 1990s that men went up into the hills and killed as many wild game as they could, and that we used to have deer right above us here, but they're all gone because that was a period of hunger
in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
What is that?
I can believe that. Yeah. I mean, as soon as things get really bad, that's the sort of thing that will happen. Yeah. So I mean, I can tell you stories about the Chernobyl accident and so on, and what it meant for the animals. It was actually very good for the animals in the area, in spite of the radioactivity, because the greater problem for the animal was people shooting them. So their numbers became much more plentiful after the accident for many years.
What are we looking at here? Is this an eagle?
This is now on the plains in Mongolia. You see a lot of big birds of prey, a lot of raptors. This is a black vulture or Cinereus vulture.
Okay.
And vultures, of course, play a very important role in this kind of an environment, because they eat animals that die, and so you don't get a lot of animals decomposing in the plain. Yeah. So vultures, eagles, so on. This is an orchid. This is called Cypripedium guttatum, the spotted lady slipper. Why do I say this? Because one of the things that brought me is that I'm a fanatical orchid fancier. Yeah, and so wherever I go, I try and find orchids. And I knew that this genus of Cypripedium, Mongolia is not a very rich country in terms of orchids, but this one genus has 4 species, so I was after these. This is the only one I have to show for my efforts. So, but I say this because when we talk about tourism, one of the ways in which you can interact with a country that you visit is something that you're passionately interested in, to see how that country connects with it.
Right. Yes, exactly. So this is the Gobi Desert?
That's right. That's part of the Gobi Desert. Now, the actual emblematic sand dunes do not actually take up a huge amount of the Gobi Desert. Right. Most of the Gobi Desert is sort of scrubland, like you see in the foreground there. The actual iconic dunescape is called the Congar area, and it's only a strip 100 miles long and about 4 miles wide. So it's actually a very slender area. Now, there are a few of these. I remember seeing one in China in what's known as Inner Mongolia many years ago. But this is, so you see 3 layers of the desert, the scrubland in front, the sand dunes, and then the mountains in the background. Those are part of the famous Altai range, which has very high mountains in the west of the country, but where we were, they're not so high, but they're still geologically part of the same range. Here's more of the sand dunes, these wonderful sand dunes. You can sit in those, and you know, they're very inspiring from an aesthetic point of view. So this is another area called the White Stupa. It's a very popular tourist area, tourist destination in Mongolia. What's actually happened is there's been a weathering process that has gradually created these interesting shapes, and you see those unusual colors and everything in the foreground. A lot of fossils are found in this kind of area. I suppose it's similar to the Badlands of Dakota?
Yeah, it looks a little like the Badlands.
That's in Montana, is it? The Badlands?
No, South Dakota.
No, South Dakota. Okay. So here we are at a lake called Coconor, and this is and you can see the terrain here. It's more taiga type of terrain. It's a steppe land with forests, and this lake here, very, very beautiful lake. It's the lake where Genghis Khan is supposed to have been crowned king of all those who live in felt tents, which was the characteristic of Mongol people. But my wife and I remember it as the place where we had there were these flies that were very irritating. So it's quite unpleasant to be in.
Right.
Here's more taiga. You see it all over the place in the northeast of Mongolia. Now, the spaces in Mongolia are so great that if you do a tour like we did, a lot of your time is spent on the road. We figured that we must have done something like 3,000 kilometers in total on that trip. So that's a view you get from the car very easily. But very often there aren't roads. And so, especially in the section to do with the northeast, in the northeast section, when we were looking at these historical areas, a lot of the travel was off-road. So you can see there, I'm
taking it that they don't have much rain there, because otherwise that would be a really hard road to drive on.
Correct. Yes. There's not a lot of rain. It doesn't rain a whole lot in Mongolia because you've got the Himalaya to the south and you've got the Altai mountains to the north west. So both of those create big rain shadows. Yes, this is another off-road moment. We're looking at that these magnificent Russian-built UAZ 452. It's a minibus, a Russian-made minibus that goes off-road, and so you see lots and lots of them in Mongolia. We always see groups of Koreans traveling together in one of these. Yeah. That's Ulaanbaatar. And it's the worst traffic jams I've ever seen in my life. So if you go to Mongolia, try and spend as little time as possible in UB, because no matter what time of the day, with the exception of, say, from 3 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, it's always bumper to bumper traffic.
Right.
Huge traffic jams. Yeah. They're not very rich, but they spend a lot of money buying big cars. It was a joke with our friends there. But what I would say is the most impressive thing about Mongolia is just this sense of vastness. It's something that I haven't really experienced in any other part of the world. There's a peculiar sense of vastness. Partly because you've got these features like the gers, those little yurts or felt tents. You see the white ones there. So you can see them, and you can thus get a sense of the size of the environment. It's absolutely huge.
Right.
But no other place in the world where I ever got that quite that
Mongolia
sense.
that has the least dense population on Earth, probably outside of Greenland. But
yeah, I mean, very low. You've got 3.5 million people for a country of 1.5 million square kilometers. Yeah, 10 times the size of Greece.
Right.
This is the Onon River. This is supposed to have been the place where the Mongol people, that's their origin story. They've got an origin story. It's called The Secret Book of the Mongols.
Right.
And it tells the story. It was commissioned by the son of Genghis Khan, Ogedi, to describe, the rise of their empire and the origins. Okay, and so they say in there that that it's around the Onon River that the Mongols arose. So we visited there. It's a beautiful place, of course. That's another picture I put in just because it's one of these memorable scenes for me with the vastness. And they describe themselves when some of their ideas, the Mongol conquerors and so on, the shamanistic ones, describe themselves as worshippers of the blue sky. And in pictures like this, I can see why.
Right.
So,
there's a great movie. It was made by Peter Weir. It was the last movie he made. Then he retired. But it's called The Way Back, and it's set in World War II, and it's about 4 or 5 people who escape a Soviet gulag and then walk. Well, they tried to walk all the way to the south. They get to the border of Mongolia, and you see this big, pagoda type shape. It's not really a pagoda, but a sign. And then they see the star and sickle on it, and they go like, "Oh no!" And then 2 or 3 of them die in the Mongolian desert. They thought they had a
right.
and eventually a couple of them make it to Tibet, and then to Nepal. So,
all right, that wasn't the one like 7 years in Tibet with Brad Pitt, is it?
No, but I can see why.
Similar story.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Okay, so obviously when it does rain, you can see it in a very impressive way from a long way off. But that night, that was our last night in the Gobi Desert. And to be honest with you, we weren't, there was a lot of wind. We couldn't be sure whether it was actually rain falling or whether it was a dust storm being blown up.
Right.
It didn't rain where we were at all that night, so we remain unsure.
Right.
It did rain once. It did rain once when we were there, and that was the night we were camping. But anyway, it wasn't too bad. So obviously, livestock production is very important for the economy, the agricultural economy of Mongolia. There are about 30 million sheep, 25 million goats, producing cashmere, as well as meat, 5 million cattle. So the countryside rolls just enough so that you can see the size of it. It's not like, say, Alberta, where everything is totally flat around, say, Edmonton. You get a sense there is enough. The dog there is notable. The dogs in Mongolia are very gentle and very friendly. This was in dramatic contrast to the dogs in Tibet, where they were totally ferocious.
Or the sheepdogs here, the Caucasian shepherds, if they are hurting their flock, they are just absolutely ferocious, and they're almost big enough to kick the big bear.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit the same here in Greece. Maybe not quite as. I'll come to Georgia, and we can see. Just, anyway, you saw the goats probably crossing the bridge. There wasn't a whole lot. Archery is still a thing. That's some of our friends, and that's Despina, my wife. They're buying something in this shop. Archery is one of the 3 sports in the so-called Nadam Festival, which happens in July. It's at different times depending on the town or village. But archery, curiously, is not so popular compared to the other 2, which are horse racing and wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
I have one more animal one that got out of sync here. But evidently that's the most important animal, the horse.
Well, it used to be, obviously. Nowadays, there are about 4.5 million horses in Mongolia. They still play an important role. They also eat horse meat. And I said to my friends, why did nobody offer us horse meat? Not that I was wanting to eat it. They said it goes off very quickly. If it's not, it decomposes more quickly. It goes off more quickly than other meat.
Right.
Yeah. Still, that's a girl whom we met on the way. We needed to ask directions on how to get to our next place because it was in the off-road section, and there were no signs or anything. A lot of the farmers, more often farmers now use motorcycles, but a lot of them still use horses. But it's remarkable, actually. Mongolia has retained a lot of its traditional way of life compared to other countries. That's the Nadam festival in one of the towns we went to. That's the winner's enclosure for the one who won the horse racing.
Uh-huh.
They have a big Nadam festival in that kid. I can only see his. Do you see all his face as well, or
no? I think the picture might. No, that's about it.
Okay, all right.
And now,
so anyway,
might be differently. Everything here is going to be cut to one size. So.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, so he was selling some souvenirs and stuff. Yeah. So that's another picture of the Nadam winner's enclosure with the horses. Yeah.
So that was basically a horse racing festival?
It's a festival that includes horse racing, wrestling, and archery. Oh, I thought you'd be interested in this picture, Byrne, because talking about the long reach
Of culture. Yes. Are you there?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Let me go back.
Okay.
What was this?
Yeah. So that's where we are in a house. We stayed for a few days with a family, a traditional family. Mongolian hospitality is absolutely amazing. People, if you turn up on their doorstep, virtually, and you ask to stay, they'll take you in. Obviously, this has a big tradition in their society because the steppe can be very ruthless if you're not equipped and so on. So my friends told me a story about a few years ago, a tourist from the West came and after a few months boasted that he had spent 2 months in Mongolia and hadn't spent any money at all because he just went from ger to ger receiving hospitality. And apparently then a whole load of his countrymen returned and started doing the same thing. So it created a very bad atmosphere in Mongolia for a while.
Yeah, that's a problem.
But anyway, it's an issue like that kind of hospitality and Western mass tourism. The two don't fit together. There you can see in this the three scripts of Mongolia. You can see Cyrillic on the top, then Latin, and then to the right you see their traditional script, also commissioned by Chinggis Khan. The person who actually created that script was a Uyghur. Uyghurs are the people from Western China. There's been a lot of issues there. But as you can see, it sort of looks a little bit like Arabic script, but sideways. And that would make sense because the person who originally made the script was Uyghur. That's one of our tourist camps, obviously in the area where they find a lot of dinosaur bones. So it's part of the thing, part of the vibe. This was from that area called the White Stupa. They built this strange little shelter there in the middle of it. So the tourists nicknamed it the bus stop because it's just like a place where a bus might stop like in Britain or something. Yeah. This is called The Three Mermaids. It's based on a local story. I must say, we really liked this. It's got an interesting vibe. It's got a slightly heavy metal vibe to it. Don't mess with me. But the women wore those tall headdresses during the days of Mongol supremacy. Most of the restaurants, by contrast, were very simple. Food in Mongolia is not very elaborate. I'll say more about that. A lot of the places we stopped were sort of like diners, It's that kind of feel to them. This is from Ulaanbaatar. I call this picture has the word Soviet because it's very much the style, the National Theatre. That's the National Theatre in Ulaanbaatar. And it's very Soviet style, the building itself, not so much the front there. I got another one of the inside building. That's another one of those Soviet minibuses. Russian-built minibuses, enjoying the beautiful sky, and that little shop in the middle of nowhere. We couldn't figure out how there was a shop in the middle of nowhere selling souvenirs.
Mhm.
But I guess there's quite a lot of people come driving along this way
Right.
during the week, tourist groups and stuff.
Do you have
Um,
an idea how many tourists they get a year there?
No, it's growing quickly, but I don't know how many they get every year now. I can tell you who are the main tourists, though. The main group of tourists by far are the South Koreans. They
Really?
come in very, very large numbers. I would say, although Mongolia is bounded by, as I say, by Russia and China and has no common border with Korea, the people who really influence Mongolian culture at the moment in many ways are the Koreans, the South Koreans mainly. You get North Koreans coming here. One of the people who were doing botanical expeditions that I was communicating with were from North Korea. But the people who really come in large numbers are South Koreans. And a lot of them come and there's a lot of come and do things like bird watching and serious, you might say, things. That's the National Theatre.
That's inside that building we saw
earlier. Yeah. But the huge mass tourism from South Koreans is groups of students who come up and go to a tourist camp and spend a week just drinking vodka the whole week. Right. And I said to my friends, Mongolian friends, I said, that's not like the South Koreans. They're usually very well behaved, very, polite, all that kind of thing. And he said, well, they come to Mongolia to let go. And they like that in South Korea, maybe. But here, they do crazy things.
Right.
We were there just the week before the Japanese emperor arrived.
Okay.
So that's this UB Square in the middle of the city with all the picture of the emperor.
Right.
And they really like the Japanese. They have nothing but admiration and respect for the Japanese. So I kind of contrast, say, with what I would hear people say in some other countries, who had bad experiences with the Japanese in the Second World War or something.
Mm-hmm.
This is again in central UB, and you see the amazing traffic issues they have.
So that's not a parking lot.
Well, it is a parking lot, yeah, but it's completely bunged, as you can see.
Right.
You need. It's like getting your car out would be like solving a Chinese puzzle. Here's one of the influences of the Koreans. You see, because Mongolian food is so simple, a lot of the restaurants are Korean. This was one of these Korean buffets. And you basically choose your food and then they cook it for you and bring it to you. It's very nice. But
I've eaten in Korean restaurants in New York City. And actually, there are some ways in which Mongolian and Korean restaurants overlap.
Yes, yeah. That's eating breakfast in one of those tourist camps. They had a very large yurt, and that's me sitting there. Sitting down like this is I find it very difficult sitting like that without a chair directly on the floor. I'm not used to it at all. So that's me with some of the tourists.
It would be difficult for me.
Yeah, it's hard if you're not used. That's breakfast in a traditional Mongolian family.
So those are dumplings of some sort?
Exactly, meat dumplings.
Right.
In fact, Mongolia really has two dishes: meat dumplings and meat noodle soup.
Yeah.
Everything else is a kind of a variation of those.
The meat
At least
dumplings
we
came
had.
to Georgia.
Ah, right.
These were
Yeah.
variation on meat dumplings here.
Yeah. So there's also tea in the, you'll see tea there, which
Right.
is colored white because there's only a tiny bit of tea and it's got milk. It was actually okay to drink their tea. What I didn't like drinking is this. This is again from the Nadam Festival, and this is the fermented mare's milk. Irag, it's called. It's that white, in the white bowl there, you've got Irag. I didn't like it at all. Very, it's definitely an acquired taste. There's also a kind of another curd that's dried, which is hard going for me. For most people. This was us, Despin and me, another Korean import. The Koreans have solved a lot of problems in Mongolia. They solved the problem of the public toilets in UB because the Mongolian government couldn't decide where to put the public toilets. So the Koreans, smart enough, said, in our supermarkets from now on, there will be toilets to which the public is welcome to come. Obviously, it was a commercial move, but it was enormously successful and solved the problem.
It's a good way to get people into your store, too.
Exactly. So that was, that slide just before is trying to solve another problem. They offered us a free massage in the supermarket there.
Oh. I saw the actual photo of this before it got cut here, and your feet are in. Are there fish nibbling at them?
No. There were no fish involved in this one.
Right.
Yeah, I know about the fish one, but that wasn't it. Yeah, they weren't happy when we didn't buy. It was a free massage, but they wanted us to buy their creams and stuff afterwards, and they were very miffed when we didn't.
Right.
So this is a funny episode, another tourism moment. We're at this Flaming Cliff. So several tour groups went out and they brought chairs, they brought deck chairs so that they could watch the sunset from a sitting position. Because in the Flaming Cliffs is another one of these impressive natural sights. Its sunset looks very beautiful.
Right.
But we get the same thing in Greece. People in Santorini, there's a tradition of looking at the sunset. You see, so you get loads and loads of tourists who come up to the top of the hill to watch the sunset. That's a picture of a tourist camp. So you've got the gers, the traditional gers on the right, and then what will be more familiar to us, the cabins on the left.
Right.
Yeah, that was in the Gobi Desert as well.
How hot was it when you were there?
It was very pleasant. I guess it would have been. Yeah, it was pleasant. I mean, it was much more challenging in Greece at that time, heat-wise. Well, this is out of Mongolia. We stopped in in Istanbul airport, which is now an airport so vast it frightens me.
Right.
But Despina has a special gold card, and so we were able to go to this special, you know those places, the clubs, frequent flyer clubs. And I thought to myself, I need to show this to Byrne. This is a real sort of tourism phenomenon.
I must say,
modern age.
I must say, I've been to the Istanbul airport once, and then Gökçen, Sabiha about 3 or 4 times, and I prefer this spacious one. The other one is so crowded and crazy.
Oh, yes, I know. I mean, about like 10 years ago, Istanbul airport was a really unpleasant place to be. The new one is scary simply because of its vastness, its size.
Right.
But it's actually relatively comfortable to be in. There's plenty of seats. and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back to the beginning again.
So,
Yeah.
where was the festival?
The festival is held in every town. Every town
Right.
has its
Well, the one you
Anadromous
went to,
festival.
which was
We
it in the
went.
north or further south?
It was in a village near to Dalanzadgad in the south, in the
Okay.
southern Gobi. The one in UB in the capital is usually happens in around the 16th of July.
Right.
We kind of we gave that a miss because we figured it'd be very, I don't know, very touristy.
Yeah.
Weren't kind of, when things attract a lot of tourists. I mean, you've spoken about this a number of times. I'm one of those people who likes to stay away from things that attract a lot of tourists. Yeah, and we both are.
Well, it sounds like you had a meaningful trip, connecting with different parts of the culture as you went. Did you have a chance to hear any music while you were there?
Yeah, we did. We yeah, not. There was some music we heard in some of the places we went to. And then our friends were playing a lot of music in the car. Which were kind of modern sort of pop music. Very much, a lot of that is coming from Russia. A lot of it is coming from there's different musical traditions within Mongolia. I would have to say that I didn't really look into that much.
Right. Yeah, I would have looked for music and puppets.
Yeah, I would expect that. Yeah,
I do that when I go everywhere, just like you look for orchids. It's like
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a unifying thread.
Yeah. And it's just like when I went to Greece. We went to see the shadow.
We went to that museum. Yeah, that was
a
fun.
great museum.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that one of the we've had other discussions since then, because one of the how to put it, the paradoxes. There's a kind of a paradox of going to visit a country, because if you go to a lot of different places and you see A, B, C, D, you get to see all the sights you're supposed to see. If you see all the sights you're supposed to see, but you don't have time to absorb it, then the result is not so great. So some people, they really like to see everything, whereas I like to get I'm kind of looking for something a little bit more nebulous. And so, like I say, I would point to things like that sense of vastness you get there, which you don't get anywhere else. Whereas things like the things that are on tourist magazines, like the White Stupa and the Flaming Cliffs, I sort of look and say, okay, they were interesting, but they wouldn't really leave an impression so much. So it's this one of these paradoxes. Once you get into that, what is good tourism? And what's the difference between good tourism and is there such a thing as excellent tourism? You're muted.
Sorry. I say you graduate from, like we'll call it mass tourist to solo tourist, but then you go into traveler. And a traveler is a different thing than a tourist in my book. And if you get to the highest levels, you're a visitor. You know people there. You stop. You do some of the same things you've done before. You're not a stranger there. And to me, that's the pinnacle. So there are places like that for me. Every time I go to Switzerland or France or the Czech Republic. I'm not just there to travel and see things. I'm also there to meet friends, see puppet shows, do the things I know that are there. But also, I'm not there just simply to like see my friends all the time. I want to see things I haven't seen as well. But
Yeah.
when I first came here to Georgia, I just stayed in Tbilisi for 3 weeks. Now it was March, so the mountains weren't really open yet. But there were people that I met at that time. They were still trying to get to as many places as possible. And my feeling is that you don't have to see everything. You can wait. You can just explore one thing. And to me, that's being a good tourist on the verge of a traveler. When you can kind of hone in. And what I was more interested in was just feeling the culture. So you can't do that if you're moving from place to place to place quickly. So
Yes, well, of course, you say that the musical end of things
yeah.
had a big influence in you coming to Georgia in the first place.
Well, my musicologist friend John Graham, who is a Georgian liturgical specialist, but he knows his Georgian folk music very well. But he asked me, he knows I know a lot about music from all over, so he said, Byrne, do you know anything? So I put out a word to you because you're in Greece. But then I just simply said, what were those records? I have maybe about 150 Greek records and CDs back in Alaska. And I said, okay, there's that one series that was put out by the Greeks. And then, EMI Greece also put out all this Middle Eastern and Arabic music, but we don't want to deal with that. But I said, and then there was this one guy playing a very strange sort of 3 or 4 stringed fiddle. I said, okay, let me look for those. And I found them all because I was able to, first I had to see the record covers again. And then I said, okay, it's from Chios or it's from Thessaly or it's from Crete, and I would look.
Yeah.
And there was like a North Aegean Traditional Music Association that I found. And I sent the link to that and I said, use the contact there. And I gave him enough stuff that, if he just finds 1 or 2 things, I'm sure he's taking some people around.
Hey.
I'm sure they'll be
Okay.
good. So,
okay.
I do homework before I travel. So,
yeah.
if I
what do you think about that old phrase? Travel broadens the mind.
It depends on the person traveling. Because there's another old phrase. I think it was E.M. Forster. It says, "In order to find the wealth of the Indies, you have to bring it with you."
To find
the wealth of the Indies, you have to bring the
Indies.
Wealth. He was talking about India, but he says you have to bring it with you. In other words, a lot of it depends on the person traveling. I met a woman in Switzerland at this place, Labrie. She was from South Carolina or something. She had come to Paris. She was a church organist. They let her go into, I think, Saint-Sulpice and play the organ. This is not a little organ. This is one of the great organs of the world. When she got up to Switzerland, her daughter, I could tell, was very apologetic for her. She said, I just don't understand what people see about Paris. And I'm going like, I didn't even bother trying to correct her and convince her of anything. I said, okay, I guess you don't see it. Because you have to bring it with you. And a lot of people travel, they don't bring. I had another friend, a really wonderful French woman that I knew back in New York City. She was a graphic artist, and she was asked to go to Japan to take part in some sort of thing having to do with her art. And I said, so are you going to study up, do any reading about things before you go? She goes, no, I'm just going to let it surprise me. And I thought to myself, really? You're going to let Japan surprise you? You're going to have no idea when you are violating their cultural traditions. You're just going to let everything surprise you. If any place, if someone said, Byrne, you have to go to Japan in December, I would be like, really? Okay. Let me start reading now, because I want to know. I have read about Japan, but I would really want to know what I should see,
Yeah. Well, I think there's great truth in that original adage, travel broadens the mind. But that's because of my own. But that's how my experience played out, because when I finished my degrees in London, I had been working very hard for 8 years basically in as an undergraduate and then as a graduate student. And then I went traveling for 8 months in North America and China and Tibet and Xinjiang. And the whole thing completely changed my perspective on everything. I would say it was the single thing that really changed me, and how I looked at all sorts of things. It changed how I looked at work. I went into environmental science, where I had originally been purely electrical engineering. And then it changed my whole view of Christianity. Everything sort of changed because somehow, but that was a long period. It was my own system had time, if you like, to absorb all the lessons. I guess it gets harder in life as you get settled and stuff. You only go away for a few weeks and stuff. It becomes harder for something to have so much of an influence.
Yeah. And I think now, actually, there is so much industrial tourism that makes it much harder to find. So,
yeah, I spoke with some people last week, and they were saying that, because I described them, what I did and how it affected me and so on. These were some younger Gen Z people, and they said it's hard to think that anybody could do that now, because everything has been so industrialized.
Right.
I don't know.
I traveled always on the edge of my expenses. And I'm so glad I did. Looking back on it, I had so many things. When I started doing this whole investigation into European puppetry, again, I was able to raise a few $1,000s back in Alaska, but that didn't last very long. And I would push myself, but, I would arrive in the town, and my first thought was, what's the cathedral here? Where are the museums? My first thought is, where are the puppet theaters? Which I'm sure is a common thought,
Yeah.
But that's also what I realized, though, is by knowing something like that, it immediately gave me an in to the history of the country that I wouldn't get if I was just a tourist, looking for yet another cathedral.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Okay, so sum up. What did you learn? How did you see Mongolia by the time you were done?
Well, I'm still, I would say I'm still processing it, because I have to find out how it's affected this view of, the sort of dark vision I would get. Right. I don't get it. I haven't been getting it since, but it's only like a month or a month and a half that has passed. Since I was there. So meeting Mongolian people and, talking to them about their history and so on was a very important thing for me in that context.
Yes.
So I think it was very important. I suspect that it's probably sort of change my deeper perspective regarding that I began with these dreams, these nightmares I had of Mongol invasions and so on. But we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was really fascinated by. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. Okay, I'm going to have to get off soon. My nose feels like it wants to explode. But did you ever see that documentary series called The Silk Road? It was a Japanese production that came out in the I think it was in the early 80s. And you can find it now, kind of rather muddy looking prints online. And there was a second part too. But I eventually got a DVD set of that, and it still wasn't that much clearer. But part of the thing is everything has changed so much. This all was set from, I think, Xinjiang or something like that, to all the back end of China. And it was just
Yes, yes. It goes along the north of China over to Xinjiang, and then in the far corner is Kashgar. And then that goes into
Taklamakan Desert, and they find things that are just kind of lost out there, little remnants of a civilization when there was water.
Yeah, there's loads of that kind of stuff there. Yeah,
love stuff like that, and that whole area, of course, that was part of the Mongols' stomping grounds, literally. And well, John, thanks for sharing that with us. And like I say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up on my channel soon on the Anadromist. But then a few months down the road, I'm going to put it up on my Georgian Crossroads and beyond. And so
that'll be great. Well, thanks for having me, Byrne.
Well,
enjoyed it very much.
The briefs are going well, and we will talk again. We still have to have our political discussion. And
yes, we have a lot. That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end the recording.
Okay.
Now.
Well, thanks to John for joining us and showing us a bit of Mongolia. I don't know about you. I don't know that much about Mongolia, although I did once watch, I think, an 8-hour documentary or something really absurdly long that came out back in either late 80s, early 90s. And it was shown at a movie theater in 2 separate days. You got to buy 1 ticket to come in for 2 days. But so I perhaps know a little more than many people, but it is quite a mysterious country. And what does Mongolia symbolize to you? And what are your favorite symbolic countries? Let me know. And go watch the other video. And join up with my Patreon. Or if you want, just contribute through PayPal. There's a link below. But if you can't do any of those, like, share, subscribe. You know the mantra. Over and over. Just say it. And eventually it happens. Thank you for all of you for joining us. And as they say in Georgia, droebit, which just is the word temporarily, but it implies a definite meeting again. And we will meet again. Won't we?
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.
Mongolia,